All right, so today I want to show you how to change a starter on a 2007 Harley Davidson Dyna Street Bob. And kind of the interesting thing about this bike is the starter's been kind of going in and out. So sometimes I'll start it and it'll start right up, and then sometimes I'll hit the button and it seems like it kind of lags a little bit. And sometimes when I hit the button, it sounds like the starter is gonna explode. There's just like complete rattling inside of the starter. So I decided to buy kind of the cheapest starter that you can get. This is actually a rebuilt starter that I got over on eBay. And believe it or not, this was only just a little bit over $100. You can actually buy like a Harley Davidson starter. I think the Harley Davidson brand new is about $450. And this one has like a 1-year guarantee. If anything goes wrong, you can just send it in and they'll instantly replace it, which is kind of cool. And there's some bad reviews on this one, and then there's some good reviews where people said they bought this for several bikes and have been running them for years and never had a problem. So I'm gonna take a chance with the cheapest one. And as far as what I've seen, installing a starter like this maybe takes about a half an hour to install the starter, so it's not too bad. And what I've actually seen on a lot of people, what they'll actually do is they'll pull the primary cover off the opposite side and drain all the primary fluid out of it. And let me tell you, you definitely don't have to do that. In order to mount the starter, it's really super simple. Take a look at this. There's only 2 bolts, like 1 bolt here and 1 bolt here. And it's a little bit tricky to get in because essentially what you have is it goes right under the battery cover here. So you have to actually take off the battery cover. I think I'm gonna take off the seat. And then underneath here, you can actually slide it in this way and avoid taking off the primary cover on the other side of the bike. So that's what I'm gonna try to do. I've never actually done this before, so it'll be kind of interesting to see how it comes out. So what I'm gonna do first is I'm gonna take this seat cover off. I'm gonna show you that. We'll take the seat off. The seat, let me tell you, that's like the easiest part right here. And then we'll take this battery cover off. And my battery cover, actually, it has a stripped out bolt, so I have like a nut and a bolt. I have to get in there with 2 wrenches to take off my battery cover. That's gonna be kind of the trickiest part to get in there. Probably what I'll do is I'll take the battery out. I've seen a lot of people, what they'll do is they'll actually go in and take the back of behind the battery. They'll take the whole cover that holds the battery, take that out just for better access to get in there to get at the starter. So we're gonna just jump in there and I'll show you kind of the intricate details of some of the things I do to get this starter replaced on my Harley Davidson. Okay, so the first thing I wanna do is I wanna take the seat off, and I haven't really seen anyone take the seat off when they're doing this, but let me tell you, it is super easy. It's just 1 screw right here, and it seems like you'll have a little bit more room taking the seat off. And I actually just popped off my whole sissy bar and my sissy bar rack that just kind of slides on here. So this is 1 screw and it just slides off really super easy. All right, so for this job here, I kind of made my own adapter here for this crazy battery cover. I just have a nut and a bolt right here because it's actually stripped out in the back. So I just use, I was gonna tell you the size of the different wrench, like the sockets and everything to use, but this is kind of custom on here because it was completely stripped out. When I got the bike, it was completely stripped out. And someday I'm gonna fix this to where I'm gonna put it back and get this nut and bolt back in there. All right, so on this one, I'm just using a nut and a bolt that kind of goes together. And of course, on everything, you wanna use a blue Loctite to put everything together. So nothing just, because this bike shakes so much because it's a Harley Davidson Dyna that really shakes a lot. And then on this, the bottom just pulls out a little and then it lifts up. It fits down into these 2 tabs into the top up here, and it exposes your battery. So this is where the bolt goes through right here, and it's supposed to fit right into this little connector right here, but that's completely stripped out. As a matter of fact, it looks like I was thinking maybe I could weld that and fix it. So the next thing I want to do is take off the battery terminals and pull the battery out. All right, so I'm just gonna use just a regular screwdriver. This screwdriver is awesome. It has all these different types of screwdrivers all in 1 screwdriver. So I'm gonna take this off. And another good thing on this is you might want to use some dielectric grease when you put it back together to make sure you have really good connections. And you want to make sure you use all the different connectors and spacers and everything. Make sure you know exactly where everything goes when you put it back together. So that's the negative, and then the positives over here. And on this one, as a matter of fact, you can actually look on this one. I added something, it's like an aftermarket USB port on this one. So what I did is, let me see if I can get this nut and all these washers off. Is what I did is I kind of came in the back right here. So this right here and this right here is the hookup to my USB port right here, which runs a USB cable all the way up to charge my phone that I use for directions up on the top. So that's what that is up on the top. And then of course, actually, so essentially what this is, this runs to a pigtail that connects into here. So this connects to this pigtail right here. I don't know if you know what a pigtail is, but it's this little connector right here. That's kind of a universal connector. And you can kind of get a better view of the pigtail right here. So this is the kind of the pigtail and the pigtail connector. And then this is the pigtail that comes from here. And then in order to run this USB device, I had to do, it was like a polarity swapper that I put in here to swap the polarity to run my USB device so I could plug stuff in here. And the other thing is this was kind of flopping around. I didn't want it to kind of flop all over the place. So what I did is I mounted something to the starter. It was a little bracket to the starter, and I mounted it with aquarium sealant to put it on the starter. As a matter of fact, I just pulled it off right now. It wasn't on that tight. And I just put it on with a zip tie to kind of secure it right to the starter. So the starter is right up under here. You see this kind of flops around. I didn't want this to bump up against the muffler and melt it, and that's why I mounted it right against the starter. So we'll have to glue this back to the new starter once we get that new starter installed. All right, so from here I want to remove the battery, and to remove the battery, it just has this little kind of like a spring-loaded rubber piece on there, and then this is the piece that goes to connect your battery, and then the battery just slides out. As a matter of fact, when I got this Harley Davidson, the battery was completely dead, and I had to replace the battery. So this battery is only just a few months old. So it's a nice brand new battery. And that's what the battery looks like. It's not that big. It's just a pretty small battery. It's still pretty heavy. So from here, what you want to do is you want to remove this. So it looks like we just have one screw here and then two more up on the top. It looks like it takes a star wrench on that one. All right, so luckily I have some star wrenches that I have when I was working on my Porsche. It seems like the Porsche uses a lot of these little, it's like a 6-point star. There's actually like a 12-point too. So this one is a T40. And you just put it right on a socket. And it looks like it pulls right off here. Oh, that is on there really good. And then you have two more up on the top here. We'll pull those off. You definitely want to stay away from your paint when you're when you're twisting these bolts. Keep a distance. You can see the whole thing's loosening up now. It's just these 3 bolts. So if you notice on all these nuts and bolts, they all have the blue Loctite on there. You definitely need the blue Loctite, and that is the weakest Loctite. You definitely don't want to use like the red. Let me tell you, if you put like some of that super strong Loctite on there, it'll be really difficult to get these off. You definitely want to use the blue when you're doing that. So let's see if we can take this off here. I know it took me a while to figure out how to route everything through this. So as a matter of fact, this is just, see this, so this is the pigtail that you can buy. This is the whole pigtail from here to here, and then I have the Polarity Reverser right on here. I can kind of show you that. Let's see, I think it's a Polarity Reverser. Oh no, it's actually, let's see. the polarity reverser, oh, it's actually on the other part of the, oh, I actually pulled the rubber piece off the terminal, but that's fine. So I'll show you the polarity reverser that you need for the USB, and that's this right here. It goes in one and out the other as far as switching the polarity from negative to positive to make your USB port work. I can actually put a link for this USB. This is pretty awesome. It has another port under here where you can plug something in. So I can actually plug something in here and then route it, you know, use some zip ties and route it back up to my pack and, you know, charge stuff that's up in my pack here. So the starter is right in here. Look at how it's jammed right up in here. I have no idea what this is. Maybe to test something, maybe plug a tester in or something. All right, so this bolt right on the top that connects the starter to the battery, this is actually a 12 millimeter, which is pretty interesting. Since this is an American-made bike, you would think it wouldn't be metric, but I guess they do have metric nuts and bolts on an American-made motorcycle. And the other thing I was wondering, you know, it could potentially be this connector here that was causing my starter problems. Oh my, I think I lost my, almost lost my nut. Whew, got that one. Ooh, that's kind of interesting. The nut has, it looks like there's like a lock washer that's kind of like a split washer on top of that, which is another thing that's kind of interesting. Ooh, this actually has two different things on here. It does have some corrosion, so potentially you could have problems with corrosion on there. But the problem is, you know, if you had corrosion, you'd probably have like kind of a sluggish starter, but I don't think you'd have a starter that sounds like it's gonna fall apart if you're starting it. So I definitely think it's a problem with my starter. And then you want to make sure to save all the nuts and bolts and figure out how to put it back together too. And then here you have another little connection right in here, a little electrical connection. It looks like you just kind of squeeze it together and pull it off, it looks like. I noticed there was a connection right there. I have no clue what that goes to, but that one doesn't look like it has any corrosion or anything in it right there. So I'm pretty sure those are the only connections. So another thing you can do is you can kind of look at the starter and kind of get a feel for the orientation and all the connections. So this is the way the starter is going to slip in right here. You have this little connector right here. I have no clue what this little rubber thing is, like a little water drain or something in there, I guess. Potentially, well, this goes in your primary. So if you got oil kind of leaking through, maybe that drains out the oil if you get kind of a blow by from your primary, which I wouldn't think you would. But that's the way it goes in. So we disconnected this, we disconnected this. This is permanently connected here, an electrical connection. So you definitely don't have to worry about that. So this, I assume this is the starter. This is the starter solenoid. And I've seen some people where they like rebuilt the solenoid or kind of rebuilt the internal workings of the starter. But for $100, just to pop it out and slide it in, that's pretty much it. So the two bolts that we have left is super easy, just right there and right there. You can see them right on the top. So we'll take those out next. So take a look at this. I have a whole bunch of these little strips of different types of like the 6-point stars, the 12-point stars, these little Allens that go on your socket. Let me tell you, these are definitely a lifesaver when you're working on a motorcycle. So what I want to do is I'm just going to take one random one, kind of put it on an extension, see if that's the right size. That's a little bit too small. The next size up, it looks like it is a 5.5. Hopefully I have the right size. That's a weird size, 5.5. That could be a problem. I don't think that's the right size. All right, so this is a 6. Wow, All right, so it is a 6. I was like, hopefully I have the right tool to actually do this project. I hate to tear all the way into it this far and then have a problem. So here you kind of run into a problem because the wrench kind of goes, well, I suppose you could do it up like this, but you're kind of tight right here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use a couple more extensions. All right, so take a look at this. It always helps to have lots and lots of tools. I have 2 really big extensions right here. And then on these, oh, let's see how tough it is here to get these out. Oh, that is really torqued on there. So what you want to do is putting these back on, you definitely want to look up the torque specifications as far as what to torque them to. You don't want to over tighten them, but you don't want to have them too loose to where they're gonna loosen up on you. Oh, wow, those are really tight. And if you don't have a manual, what I like to do is I like to look on, I look on Google. I ask, as a matter of fact, I asked Google, the Google Assistant, what the torque is for all these nuts and bolts, and she'll definitely tell me. All right, so once I get this in here, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna loosen both of them and then kind of get in there with my hands and see if I can get them out. So here's the other bolt right in here, just 2 bolts, really super easy. And I'm not sure if there's Loctite on these or not. There might not be, since these are torqued pretty good. So what I do is I'm just gonna loosen it up really good, and then I'm just gonna kind of grab onto it and pull it out. That's a pretty decent bolt. Seems like a lot of corrosion. Not really any Loctite or anything on there, it just seems like, it's really gummed up on that one. This one looks pretty clean, a little bit of, it seems like just corrosion in there, which is pretty wild. All right, now comes the moment of truth. Can we get this thing out? Can we wiggle it out? Let's see, so this actually could be interesting. I'm wondering if I need to take this off. All right, so I'm gonna take these little connectors off. It looks like the black one is closer, the orange one is further. You definitely don't wanna mix those up. I think that's like some kind of a sensor or something right there. I definitely don't wanna break that off. So let's see if I can kind of wiggle this out here. Oh yeah, take a look at that. All right, so there's my old starter. So what I was actually reading, this is pretty interesting too. Look, you have a lot of corrosion right in here. And then if you actually read the directions, it says, there's actually directions with the starter, believe it or not. And it says to pay close attention to the teeth here and to pay close attention to the teeth on there as well. So if you have kind of wear on those teeth where the starter engages with these teeth, it looks like little bit of wear on there. And I think what's happening is the starter's not engaging all the way. And it's kind of, I think when it sounds really bad, I think it's the teeth of the starter kind of misaligning with these teeth are not fully engaging, and you get that really bad kind of a clunking sound. So if these are really super worn, you'd have to actually go in here and replace this wheel. I'm not sure exactly what they call it, like a flywheel or something like that. You can also see the belts right here. This is a belt-driven motor, which is kind of cool. You can actually see it right there. So that's pretty simple. So insulation should be just the reverse. So I'm gonna go ahead and put it together. And what I'm thinking, I probably wanna use a little bit of fluid on this O-ring, something like maybe a little bit of, as a matter of fact, there might be a little bit right here that I can use to lubricate that O-ring on the new starter. All right, so I lubed this O-ring right here with a little bit of my primary fluid just to seal it really well up in there. And my bike's not leaking anything, so it was definitely sealing okay. So what I'm gonna try is I wanna try to squeeze this back up in here and see if we can get this. This is kind of an interesting little, like a vent hose right there. It doesn't really go to anything. Well, let's see if I can squeeze this in here. This is a tight squeeze. Wow. But supposedly, oh yeah, that goes right in. Super easy. Yeah, look at that. It even has the nuts. Nice and clean with the new nuts and everything right on here. So you can connect it right to here. All right, awesome. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna connect this. I think this is maybe like a temperature sensor or something. You don't wanna forget that. And then down here, you have the negative ground of the battery. Actually, on the video, what I did is I removed this little thing right here. This is where the negative terminal of the battery comes, and grounds right here. And just cleaning this up a lot can really help your whole electrical system. So if you actually are in here, you might want to get in there and clean that up too. All right, so as far as these starter bolts, what I like to do is I have this really old brass brush here, and I just brush off the threads. And it doesn't look like there's any Loctite on these, so I think I'm gonna put them back together without any Loctite. So pretty much just brushed off kind of the major corrosion on here. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna thread them back in and use a torque wrench to torque them. And I found on a website, the torque for these particular bolts looks like it's gonna be 24 foot-pounds of torque that you need on here. And let me tell you, if you're working on a bike, you definitely need a torque wrench. So I have like a high range torque wrench, and I have a low range that goes down into the inch pounds, which is good for, you know, like some of the steering wheel components and stuff like that. Oh, let me see if I can squeeze this one in here. All right, so we got these pretty tight down here, just kind of hand tight. What we're gonna do is we're gonna follow up with a torque wrench. If you've never seen a torque wrench, essentially what it is it looks just like a regular socket wrench, but it actually, when you get to the certain pressure, it clicks. And you can set the different pressures down at the bottom. So right here, I set it to 24 foot-pounds, and this is like, you can back it all the way out to 0 and then go all the way around, it's 10, and then spin it around again, it's another 20, and then you go up another 4, it's 24. Really super simple using a torque wrench. Let me tell you, if you're working on your motorcycle, you definitely want to invest in some nice torque wrenches, and they're not that expensive. I've had this one for years. So what I want to do is I'm going to kind of snug that one down before I really crank on it. I'm going to come over here and get this one snug too, so it's pretty even back and forth. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to torque it. You'll actually see this kind of click when I get to the certain pressure on here. And 24 foot-pounds is a lot. So there, you heard it. You hear it click, that's 24 foot-pounds of torque on that starter bolt. If you can actually get it out of here. That little, kind of jammed in there because of that little hose there. All right, so we'll do this one. "24 foot-pounds." You just kind of have to wiggle it out. And believe it or not, there's a torque specification on every single bolt on a motorcycle, and some people are like diehards when it comes to the torque specs on every single thing. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna clean up these electrical connections. These are the ones that go up here to the starter. All right, so this is the dielectric grease that I use, and you can use this on anything electrical to improve the contact between two different connections that are electrical. So I just put a little bit on my fingers and then just kind of put just a little bit. You only need just enough to kind of lubricate it just a little bit to get it right on there. Almost seems like, oh, you know what? This is just free floating. All right. Oh, so this goes through my battery box. All right, so before I completely tighten this up, probably what I'll do is I'll run this through the battery box to make sure I have the right alignment. So another thing, you want to make sure that this lines up right here, this little electrical connection down on the bottom. Not sure exactly what that's for, but you definitely want to connect this. So you connect this, and that's pretty much it. All right, so we have the starter installed, which is pretty awesome. Now we just have to put the battery box on here. So this is the pigtail that goes to this right here. So let's see, this is actually coming right through here. So it's gonna be kind of up at an angle like this. So that should be fine. Kind of right there, tightening it up right down here. So you can kind of get the right angle on this cable going up to your battery. I don't think it really matters that much. Then this just kind of protects it so nothing kind of hits it and shorts out, because that's going right to your battery, to the positive side of your battery. I don't know if this will actually go all the way down. Maybe. Yeah, there we go. It goes all the way down to protect it. All right, so this pigtail's a little bit tricky in order to get it just right. So let's see. All right, so in here I took a wire brush and I tried to get as much of this blue Loctite off as possible on these 3 bolts that connect to the battery box here. So they had 2 with the washers that go on top and then 1 in the middle that didn't have a washer. And I always wonder, did someone actually take this apart and lose the washer? Or was it supposed to be like this? And you can see that one's, I don't know if it's, I guess it's the same size. It looked like it was a little bit longer. So then what I want to do is I actually want to take this blue Loctite. This is what I use. Just a low strength. This is a thread locker purple is what this is. One of the lower strength ones. You can, I think the blue one is pretty much the same as the purple. So I just put a little bit on and kind of set these aside for now. And you don't, it doesn't matter how much you put on, just a little bit right on one little side there's plenty. That just doesn't vibrate out. And this, let me tell you, I use this for just about everything. So then what you want to do is you want to put this back on. And here, take a look at this. This is where my, it's stripped out. You're supposed to have threads right in here. I don't know if I can, I was thinking maybe I could weld this, but it looks like it's mainly plastic. It looked like someone tried to drill it out at one point. So I just use a bolt in the back. It's really difficult to kind of get that bolt and the nut and the bolt on that. So let's see here. You have to get it in the right orientation and then kind of slip it up through here. You want to thread the negative through here. You want to thread the positive through here. And then this is for the pigtail that I actually bought this. And with a pigtail like this, you can run a whole bunch of different things. You can actually set this up to charge, to trickle charge through the winter. That's what I originally bought it for. And then I actually kind of upgraded to that other, let's see if I can figure out where the hole is in the back of this. All right, so we have the positive, negative, the pigtails, and then here we actually have a fuse for the pigtail. Most people use these pigtails to charge through the winter, and I haven't seen a lot of people doing like a USB. The bad thing about this USB over here is that it's not waterproof. So every time I wash my bike and then I plug this into my phone, as a matter of fact, I'm getting a lot of corrosion on here, which is kind of crazy. Every time I get it wet, it like airs out my phone. So when I get it wet, I have to like keep it off and then keep my phone unplugged because it like freaks out my phone every time I get it wet, which is kind of crazy. All right, so this is I'm sure there's a torque specification on this. I'm thinking it's probably about 75 inch-pounds, which you kind of have to be careful on these. So what I want to do is I'm just going to snug them up. I would highly recommend getting a low torque wrench and kind of practicing on some of those low torques before you actually, so this is right into plastic, so you definitely don't want to crank that down too much, just snug. And then the Loctite, of course, is going to keep everything together too, so you don't really have to worry about that. Another thing I want to do eventually at some point is glue this little bracket right to my new starter. Hopefully my new starter will actually work once we get it all back together. That's the other thing, is if we actually start it up and it doesn't work, then we'll have to tear the whole thing apart again, which would be pretty unfortunate. All right, so from here, we want to put the battery in. Battery goes right in here. So we want to pull these terminals out, kind of squeeze the battery in here. And then the pigtail kind of squeezes up in the this little kind of the bracket over on the right. So you kind of have to move all the cables out of the way in order to get the battery in. If we can get it in there. Just like so. It goes all the way to the back. And then, let's see. We actually had this little cover on the other battery terminal cable here that we have to put on to make sure we can cover the battery like this. Definitely don't want to strip these out. I always want to cover your positive terminals as much as possible. And then this is kind of the fuse. I kind of bury it underneath this little strap here. Seems like it's working pretty good. Just like that. All right, so this is actually going to connect right to this pigtail here for my USB charger, which I will keep off for the moment. So that's all connected right there. So what I actually do is I put a little bit of like aquarium sealant or silicone right on there, and I push it against here, and I put in like a big, like a beach towel to push it up against here until it cures, and that seems to work the best as far as trying to push it up. It took me forever to figure out what to get in here to push this up to get it to cure, to adhere to my starter. But I guess it doesn't really matter because you're not really moving around that much, but there's not a whole lot of play where it could go anywhere. You could probably just leave it like that without attaching it to your starter. Okay, so for the last thing, you want to put your battery cover back on. It has these two little holes right here and then two little tabs in the top. So that kind of goes over the top and then slides down on those tabs and then pops right in the bottom. And unfortunately, it's stripped out in the back like you saw before, so I'll have to use the nut and the bolt on that one. And you can use pretty much any nut and bolt. This is just what I use. And this is a little bit tricky too. So on this one, I use blue Loctite, which, you know, trying to get back there with 2 wrenches with some blue Loctite gets a little bit tricky to get this one off. It would be definitely easier if you could get another battery. As a matter of fact, I could probably get another battery box that has that in there. Instead of trying to fix this one, I might be able to just get another box on that one. So believe it or not, I'm still struggling with this bolt and this nut at the bottom of my battery box. This is like, yeah, this is a nightmare here. Oh, I think I got it. I think. Oh, thank goodness. Wow. All right, I'm going to eBay next thing, and I'm going to buy a new battery box. One that has the proper threads in there, so I don't have to deal with this. This is crazy right here. This is probably the hardest part. All right, so then we just need to put the seat back on. All right, so the seat is real easy. It just has this little lip that slides right underneath here at the front, just slides right up underneath. And then it has one bolt right in the back, super easy. And this one happens to be a Phillips head screw right in the back. I've actually seen some where you can get them to where they're just, you don't even need a tool. You can just do it manually with your hand, which is kind of crazy. So that's pretty much it for the starter replacement. So now the real test is, I want to start this thing up and see if it'll actually start with my new starter and sound okay without falling apart and sounding like a racket. All right, guys, so the moment of truth. Let's try it. Let's see if we can get this thing going. Hopefully it'll work, and if it doesn't, oh, I'd have to tear into the whole thing again. Hopefully it works and hopefully it sounds good. You ready? Here we go. Oh yeah. That sounds pretty good. So that sounded pretty good. Let's try it one more time. I always like to try it twice. Sounds good. All right, third time's the charm. I'll try it one more time. Turn the ignition on. Oh yeah, there we go. Oh yeah. All right, guys. All right, so all three times sounded really good starting on that one. So I'm definitely satisfied with that one. All right, guys, thanks for coming along. Thanks for checking out my starter repair on my 2007 Harley Davidson Dyna Street Bob. So thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.